Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We're starting the week out with a amazing show today. During the first hour, we're going to be discussing evolution. You know how I love evolution, to look for all the answers to all the things that we can't explain. And we're going to be looking at a protein found in vertebrates, amphibians, fish, mammals like us. That actually, while it affects our ability to acquire greater fitness, it may actually shorten our lives. So this is going to be an interesting discussion. Then later in the show, we're going to be joined by a doctor who did a study on previously castrated male dogs by giving them, of all things, testosterone replacement therapy. And we're going to talk about the results of that study. It's fascinating. In fact, I would say that it's time we stop ovariectomizing female dogs and castrating male dogs and just start doing things like tubal ligations and vasectomies because sex hormones are important. Imagine you as a 6-year-old boy or a 6-year-old girl having your ovaries or your testicles removed. Do you think your life would be better moving forward? I don't think so. So we're going to get to the bottom of that a little bit later in the show. But before we do any of that, we have to thank our title sponsor. And that is, of course, Legendary Foods. Legendary Foods is the maker of the Tasty Pastry. Tasty Pastry is taking the world by storm. It started out as a Pop-Tart or replacement for a Pop-Tart with less than 1 gram of sugar and 20 grams of high-quality protein, dairy protein. But it's become so much more because now the crust really makes you feel like you're eating a piece of pastry. Imagine your favorite pastry being good for you with less than 1 gram of sugar and 20 grams of protein. It'll help keep you in your dietary lane. You'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 for 10% off. Don't forget to check out their seasoned almonds and their delicious nut butters, which also have no sugar. And during the commercial breaks, you'll hear a secret word. If you write that secret word down in an email and send it to onair@superhumanradio.net, include your mailing address, we will send you a free box of tasty pastries. Lots and lots of them are going out next week because I have been a little derelict of my duties of passing those names over to Legendary Foods, which is all going to be completed this week. And now, without further delay, let's have my guests come on, open up their microphones. And so we are joined now by Dr. Qinchuan Wang and, of course, Dr. Gabriel Bever. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl. It's great to be here.
So this is fascinating to me. But before we start talking about the actual research, what research preceded this that this study needed to be done? Whoever wants to grab that first.
Well, I think there have been a lot of researches before ours. The main topic we study is senescence. So senescence is the process of bodily deterioration with aging. So a lot of people, when talking about aging, are actually talking about senescence. So senescence has a major role on your health. So when you get older, your chance of getting infection, of getting killed by accidents, or get infectious diseases increase a lot. And in fact, senescence is so important. If we do a thought experiment, if there's no senescence after your age 18, the chance of you living to 700 years of age will be 50%.
Oh my God, I've never heard this one. That's mind-boggling.
Yeah, because your chance of dying each year increases with aging. So every year, you're more and more likely to die. So if your mortality rate, so the chance of dying in a single year, stay the same after your 18th birthday, you would likely live to 700 years of age. And you have 13% chance of living to 2000. So senescence.
So this actually fits very nicely. So we just did a show recently about how old can a human being live to, given a lot of the things that we're dealing with today. And the thing that I found most fascinating about that study was once you get to 110, your probability of dying the next year is only 50%. There's almost like once you get to, and this is, okay, so we have to slow this up a little bit. This is really good stuff. We've been talking about senescent cells on this show. My first show was glucose signaling, how it heralds cellular senescence. That was 10 years ago. And since then, I've had brilliant people like Dr. Mikhail Blagasclony, who is a proponent of rapamycin therapy, which I take 6 milligrams twice a month. I am actually thinking of doing the dasatinib and quercetin instead, because you just do that once a month. But when we talk about inflammaging, right? Inflammation and aging, it comes back to senescent cells. Senescent cells really compromise the immune system because everything's on fire all the time. So the immune system is constantly turned on. So what you're saying here is really, it's actually put a lot of these concepts right in front of us right here. I've never heard that said before. So how does this protein that you studied, which is kinase, right? The protein kinase, right? How does that affect cellular senescence?
Well, I think we're a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
But I can tell you it's related to inflammation, most likely. Because in our study, we found that activation of this protein would lead to the mobilization of inflammatory programs inside the skeletal muscles, and also related to inflammatory cell activation. So in our study, it's in the context of physiological function. So it's probably good because transient inflammation is important for our body to defend against infectious diseases and to repair injuries. But if you keep it going and going during old age, it's bad. Just as you said, it's like our body is on fire. So, yeah. But return back to the question, why we study this protein. As I said, we are interested in senescence, and senescence has such an important impact on how long we can live. So the question is, why do we senesce? So most people would think, oh, it's not a good question to ask because everything would break down, like your house, your dishwasher, your car, all break down. So why should our bodies be different? But in fact, I think our bodies are very different from those objects because we're the products of evolution. And in fact, if you think how we come about, we develop from a single fertilized egg, a single cell. We develop into an 18-year-old, very healthy, strong adult. So evolution endowed us with this ability, this complex program to develop from single cell to such a perfect body. So why hasn't it make the maintenance program more efficient and keep this healthy body going for a couple hundred years? So this actually is a very deep question in evolution, because you can imagine everything being equal. A person who can live to 700 years of age and produce until 700 years of age would surely outcompete his peers or her peers in terms of evolutionary success, because he or she can leave a lot of progeny. So why hasn't evolution make us live much longer and much healthier in old age? So this question had been asked by evolutionary biologists for many years, until in the middle of last century, some answers were started to emerge. So I will let Gabe to talk about that.
Well, I would just add that, this question of senescence, why is it that these senescent cells do turn our tissues on fire as we get older and lead ultimately to our deaths, has been asked really since evolutionary theory has been a viable scientific concept. And so it's an important question. It's at the forefront of evolutionary theory. And as you can imagine, with that kind of history, there have been a number of theories that have been put forward. Some of those range from, for example, that it's a species selection. So it's simply that as we get older, we are contributing less and less to the propagation of our species. And so perhaps senescence is actually eliminating older individuals to make room and get rid of them to make room for younger.
Culling the herd. We would call that in hunting.
Culling the herd.
Right.
That's largely not considered a viable hypothesis, at least to explain the totality of senescence as a process, in part because evolutionary biologists usually consider, and the data suggests, that most selection is happening at the individual level. So it's not about selecting one species over the other, or whether it's good for a species, but whether it's good or bad for a single individual. So another possibility is what was called the mutation accumulation theory. And it's simply as we get older, the genes that have not been expressed before, the ones that are expressed late in our life, after we have gone past our reproductive age, when those genes are expressed, even if they are deleterious, even if they harm us, they are probably not very important from the perspective of selection, natural selection and evolution, because whether or not we have propagated, we have sent our genes into the next generation, that decision has already been made. And so at the end of our life, you can imagine that there is what is called a selection shadow. These genes are not under strong selective control because we have already either reproduced or not. And so, but the problem is that doesn't explain why we have a reproductive window to begin with. And as Qinchuan said, that really the leading theory in this region, or in this line of study, emerged in the late 50s, and it's called antagonistic pleiotropy. And it's built on...
You cut out. What you said was antagonistic pleiotropy?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so the concept of pleiotropy is critical here. And what it means basically is that a single gene may have more than one effect. And we see that all the time now. You can just watch a TV commercial for a drug and you will see the benefits, but at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a long list of negative effects, side effects. This is the idea of pleiotropy, that different traits, different genes especially, are responsible for different traits. And so an antagonistic pleiotropy relationship would be one in which a gene is conveying some kind of effect late in life that would be detrimental and that we would categorize as being part of this overarching process called senescence. But it must also be, or it might also be, doing something positive that is being expressed earlier in life when that focus of natural selection is brighter and when the power of that selective process is more powerful. And so genes that are hurting us late in life may be helping us earlier in life. And the problem for us is that the genes that are helping us earlier in life have much more power in terms of evolutionary change and evolutionary selection.
Because I've said this on my show for over a decade now. Maslow has nothing to do with the one job we have, and that is to have a child and then die.
Right.
Because the trajectory of the species is all that is important from an evolutionary perspective. So as long as you're capable of fathering a child and being around to at least get that child launched early in life, you know, you're still viable. And when we look at evolution, we forget that procreation is job number one. And the body, that's why young people like me, when I was in my 20s, I could go out drinking all night long and then run a marathon the next day. I've done it. And,
Yeah, right.
I'd stroke, you know, if I tried to do something. Because when you're at that reproductive pinnacle, your body is capable of supercompensation to keep everything together. But then once you get to a certain age, the body goes, you know, you're done. Now, and that's why I think hormone replacement therapy, by the way, plays an important role, because the body still thinks it's young. But with that being said, what about this theory that I've come up with? I remember reading a study about metabolomics where they looked at proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And they determined that every single thing we eat has a toxic effect when you think of toxicity. And so we literally, and we know that the more gas you put through an engine, the faster it wears out. What about the bio debris accumulation, the metabolic debris accumulation in cells, iron overload, and even other things that shouldn't be in our body gets in? How does that play a role in the development of senescent cells?
Accumulation of, for example, dysfunctional proteins and other metabolites are certainly important for senescence. Yeah, so the question is why our bodies are not equipped to efficiently remove those metabolites or dysfunctional proteins. So why is there a limit for maintenance? And that goes back to the idea Gabe conveyed. So there's a evolutionary trade-off between early and late stage. So if a gene, when it expressed in older age, doesn't play sufficient role or even plays actively promoting detrimental roles, if it conveys a good effect in younger age, then evolution will keep it. So perhaps it's due to this that we have this inefficiency, especially during old age, to deal with the debris or senescence cells and keep our body young.
Yeah, and Carl, one of the examples you use, the absorption of iron is one of the candidates, or it's often discussed an example of an antagonistic pleiotropic trait, in that we absorb too much iron, it collects in our liver, the liver tissue dies, and we die. But it also may protect us from anemia earlier in life. For women who lose a lot of iron during menstruation, it could be advantageous to them. And again, those early advantages from an evolutionary perspective are more powerful than the detrimental effects that plague us later in life. Evolution doesn't care if our liver accumulates iron late in life. As long as we've survived, we had vigor in youth, and that translated to reproducing and conveying our genes onward.
Right. No, I agree. I keep, everything, a lot of things I see in analogies of automobiles. And it's funny because I have a motorcycle and I keep investing money and making it faster and faster. And when you buy cams, which cars have cams, they open and close the valves. You have to make a decision whether or not you want the horsepower up front of the power curve or in the back. And so you can't have both. You just can't. Right. And this is like what you're saying. These genes are important up front. They're going to be probably detrimental in the back. You're not going to see the power that you want in the back. If you choose them for back here, then chances are you're not procreating. You're probably just withering away for the first 30 or 40 years of your life. It's very fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Do neonatal genes play a role? I know that this is going to expose me for the fool that I am, but I keep thinking about neonatal genes in the reconstruction of, let's say, like organs. We have these genes that are turned on when we are having this stem cell party called an embryo, right? Mm-hmm. And it becomes a baby. And even early in life, those genes are still doing things. But then at some point in time, they shut off. And those genes, to me, present a unique opportunity that if we can turn them back on with specificity, maybe we can repair necrotic tissue in the heart or the damaged liver from living too many years with high iron. Do neonatal genes offer any value in understanding how they work and how to switch them on and off?
So the genetic program during development is quite complex. So many genes get turned on in neonates or early childhood and then turned off. And they are turned on for specific reasons. And some of them are probably important for cellular proliferation or differentiation. So the process of making the organs. And some of them are turned off later on because they are no longer compatible with adult functions. Actually, in the heart, when you look at a healthy heart, there are specific genes expressed in adulthood. And when the heart gets sick, like after a heart attack, its function is reduced. Some of the early markers for heart disease are actually the neonatal genes, like a major contractile protein called myosin. So there are different forms of it. So in a sick heart, the neonatal isoform is actually upregulated. And in our lab, we use it as a marker to show that the heart is not well. So
wait a minute. Is the heart is not well because the heart is trying to fix itself? A lot of times these markers, I think, are blamed. For instance, oxytocin concentrations in the sick heart go up, but oxytocin has been shown to have a profound developmental effect on the baby heart. And
right.
So people go, oh, oxytocin causes heart problems. No, the body's trying to fix the heart problem, and that's why we have the higher content. So is that a plausible concept?
That's a great observation, Carl. So in order to demonstrate whether a gene is beneficial or not in an animal model, we can overexpress it. So there are some genes, when you neonatal genes, when you overexpress them in adulthood, they indeed do bad things. But there are also some others that when you overexpress them, they're beneficial. So there are both cases are possible. Yeah, but turning on neonatal program, overall turning on, it's probably not very good, because I think at least for those genes involved in cellular proliferation, they might be linked to cancer.
I know, but you know what? We understand so much more about cancer. The metabolic and mitochondrial concept of cancer development that Dr. Thomas Seyfried has come on the show and spoken about numerous times. So, I hate to use cancer as one of the worrisome outcomes, because cancer clearly starts in the mitochondria, mitochondrial dysfunction. That Seyfried's work with transplanting the mitochondria from cancer cells into healthy cells and vice versa has kind of really shown that. But let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about this protein that you talk about in your study. It's called calcium MK2. Is that what it is?
Yes, it's called calcium calmodulin dependent kinase 2. Okay. So we can shorten it for CaMKII. So CaMKII
Carl, your CAM example earlier and the car is going to be a perfect segue into the function of this gene.
In our lab, we call CaMKII a turbocharging molecule. Sometimes we call it the gas pedal of the heart or the skeletal muscles. We call it this because CaMKII is a protein kinase. So basically, it's a protein that turns on or off other proteins by tagging other proteins with a chemical tag. So in the heart, when CaMKII itself is turned on, it goes on to modify the functions of other proteins. And basically, the net consequence of CaMKII in the heart turning on short term is to increase the speed of heartbeat. So it makes the heart beat faster and make the blood pumping action stronger. So it increases the cardiac output, thus increase your ability to move. And in the skeletal muscles, CaMKII activation can make the muscles better at uptaking glucose from the bloodstream. And glucose is a very important energy source for exercise. So that's why we call it a turbocharging molecule. And the reason we looked at this protein, well, this story started more than 10 years ago. In 2008, Dr. Mark Anderson's lab, which I later joined as a postdoc. So his lab found that CaMKII can be activated by reactive oxygen species through oxidation. And at that time, it was already well known reactive oxygen species are generally bad during aging because it can damage cellular constituents and it can dysregulate your signaling pathways. It's involved in a lot of diseases. So because of this, his lab and others started looking for the detrimental functions of CaMKII oxidation. So lo and behold, they found that CaMKII oxidation is involved in atrial fibrillation, in asthma, in sudden cardiac death after heart attack, and in cancer. So basically, he and others found that CaMKII oxidation is really bad. So after I joined his lab, I was wondering, why would evolution keep this detrimental feature in CaMKII? What's the rationale behind that? So as a biologist, I was trained in a basic biology department. So I have always been interested in evolution. So I look at the sequence or sequences of CaMKII proteins throughout the evolutionary tree. And so I found something that was very striking. So I approached Gabe for a discussion. Gabe can tell you the rest of the story.
Oh, hey, Gabe, it's you.
Right. So when I entered the story, Mark Anderson's lab had established this detrimental effect of oxidative CaMKII, and Qinchuan had developed this data that were very convincing that there was also a positive effect in the muscle. Do you want to talk about that first, Qinchuan, or
sure.
The positive data? Yeah.
Yeah. So based on my conviction at that time was that there must be something positive for CaMKII to be oxidized. And because of what we just said, CaMKII is a turbocharging molecule in the muscles. So I was wondering whether CaMKII oxidation is there for this turbocharging function. Because we know that during exercise, the skeletal muscles produce a lot of reactive oxygen species. They can function as signaling molecules. So I thought maybe this reactive oxygen species actually turns on CaMKII, which in turn ramp up the function of the muscles. So what I did was I genetically modified mice, a very good animal model. So I modified them so that their CaMKII in their skeletal muscles can no longer be activated by oxidation, but it retains all the other functions, all the other ways of activation. So it's still normal CaMKII, just it cannot be activated by oxidation. So I put those mice on treadmills, forced them to run, and it turned out if you don't have CaMKII oxidation in the muscles, you cannot run as far, as fast as your counterparts. And I further take those mice on a special apparatus to look at their leg contraction. So I stimulated their legs to contract, and their legs become fatigued much more quickly than their counterpart. And then I take their skeletal muscle fibers, the muscle cells from their foot, and I look at the handling of a signaling molecule called calcium inside the fibers. And I found that they have reduced ability to move calcium ions around. Calcium is the signal that promotes your muscles to contract. Yeah, so basically I showed that, CaMKII oxidation is indeed very important for this turbocharging function. And then that can go back to Gabe.
Okay, wait. We have to take a break. We'll go back to Gabe when we come back from the break. But then I want to start asking questions because we know there was a study done a few years ago that showed that high doses of vitamin C stopped the adaptation of mitochondria to endurance exercise. And that has to figure in here. We have to be able to that fits nicely into this discussion. So we're going to do this. We're going to take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll pick it up on the other side. Stay tuned. You are listening to and watching Superhuman Radio. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR25 and save 25% off these delicious bars today. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that, do this, avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Inside Tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. I keep saying the number one killer is insulin resistance. Managing blood sugar is the key to living long and aging well. But we all like to eat starchy carbohydrates and sugars from time to time. How do I manage this? I use a product called Blood Sugar Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This easy-to-take supplement is the result of numerous tests to find the absolute best formula for maintaining healthy blood sugar. Blood Sugar Breakthrough works to safely lower blood sugar after meals so that you can maintain a healthy weight and redirect carbohydrates to your muscles where they can be burned as energy. This means you'll avoid the worst effects of high blood sugar, like weight gain and advanced aging, while enjoying more stable energy, mental clarity, and fewer cravings. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blood sugar and save 10% with code SHR10 today. Phlebotomy.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/Delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8, and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep, and that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Before I bring my guests back on, I have to also plug one of our other sponsors, and that is Restoracell. This is the most amazing face cream. Guys don't usually pay attention to the quality of the skin on their face. It's something we watch women do, and as a result, they look a lot better than us when we age next to them. But Restoracell uses a peptide called GHKCU. It's a copper peptide that can actually reverse sun damage it actually flips and affects about 40 different genes responsible for youthful skin. Right now, my audience can save 25% off if they go to shrnetwork.biz/RestoraCell, I believe it is. You know what? I don't see it here. It's either blue or RestoraCell. Isn't this terrible? I don't have that information on the images that I have in front of me. Oh, I do have it. SHR25 is the code. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue. It was right there in front of my face. That's why I couldn't see it. So check it out. It's great stuff. I give it 2 thumbs up. Elisa loves it. You will too. We got to pay bills here, guys, you know?
Understood.
All right. So let's go back to Dr. Bever. So you're going to pick up from where Dr. Wang left off and bring us up to speed here.
Right. So at this point, we have data that oxidative CaMKII is detrimental, especially late in life. It makes us more susceptible to heart disease. But we also have some data suggesting that it's a positive gene in the sense that it helps our muscles perform at higher levels. It increases our exercise physiology. We also have data by surveying published genomes that this gene exists in our vertebrate relatives, as you said, Carl, all the way, reptiles, amphibians, fish, but not in invertebrates, in all the animals that lack backbones.
Interesting.
And so they came to me with these data and they say, Mark and Qinchuan said, do these data make sense to you? Does this position in our evolutionary past make sense for this kind of, especially muscle advantage to our skeletal muscles? Would that have had an effect? And it's probably the one time in my career where the data have ringing clarity. It was just like the perfect place on the tree, evolutionary tree, to have this transformation, because it's that point on the tree when we were evolving away from all of our relatives that are still invertebrates. We were evolving a different ecology. Our closest relative among invertebrates, what they do is that they hatch from an egg, they go down to the bottom of the sea, and they sit there and they pump water through their body and filter out food. What vertebrates do is they lead a very active lifestyle. They are swimming through the water column. They are chasing down prey. They are actively doing the things that make up their ecology. And so it's a very distinct ecological formation, and it's easy to see how those kinds of advantages, the ones that Qinchuan found in those experiments, would have been advantageous at that point. And the fact that we have never lost those pathways since that origin is, again, supporting evidence of how important they are to our biology, or to our ability to pass on our genes, our evolutionary potential.
Well, and let's not forget that muscle affects bone mineral density. People don't realize this. When you lift weights, when I was powerlifting, probably still true to today because I still do move heavy weight, the bones upregulate to be able to assist the muscles so that they work better. I mean, you can't put a 10,000 horsepower engine in a Vega. You'll twist the frame and everything else. So the muscles and the bones, they have a very symbiotic relationship. The muscles are telling the bones, you're going to need a lot more strength if you're going to handle me. And so that's that other interplay as well. What I want to ask you now, and I guess Dr. Wang, I'll post this to you first. There's been studies that show that taking antioxidants can actually diminish the adaptive experience of the mitochondria, which we want. We want supercompensation. We want upregulation. So what is this information you have? How does that fit with that in that context?
Well, that's actually demonstrate this concept called hormesis. So hormesis is this concept that something toxic at high dose might be beneficial for you, if it's at suitable dose. So in our mind, we think that reactive oxygen species are just like this. So there are signals that has this hormesis effect. So you need to have it because inside your body, there are many proteins, such as CaMKII 2, that are sensitive to reactive oxygen species. And when they're activated or inactivated by oxidation the signal to the body to carry out proper responses. So, for example, ROS reactive oxygen species can help the mitochondria to proliferate. And actually, in addition to the study you mentioned, in 2009, there was another study which is published in PNS and is highly cited. It was done in a German group, in a German lab. So they subjected a number of healthy human subjects to exercise. And they look at the beneficial effect of exercise on insulin sensitivity, or on the ability to uptake glucose from the blood. So what they found is that when the subjects exercised, they did get benefits from exercise. But if let the subject to supplement with combination of vitamin E and vitamin C, pretty high dose, for the duration of the exercise, which was a 4-week exercise regimen, then the subjects didn't get any benefit on their glucose handling ability from exercise. So that shows oxidation in exercise plays very important roles, not only for like improving your exercise performance, but also for other metabolic benefits that most people who exercise want to get.
So, okay, so we also know that there is a concurrent rise in glutathione production in intense exercise. And intense exercise also increases oxidative stress on the body. So it seems like the body is trying to manage the oxidative stress, but while utilizing it, perhaps. Is that Indeed. A fair assessment?
So the oxidative stress itself is a stress, it's a signal. On the other hand, it's a signal that tells the body that, hey, you are facing increased oxidative stress and you need to figure a way to deal with it. And the body's way to deal with oxidative stress is through upregulation of a number of proteins that are involved in eliminating oxidative stress, such as glutathione, and enzymes use glutathione for reduction process. Superoxide dismutase. So the study I mentioned actually looked at some of the antioxidant genes, and they found that if you supplement antioxidants during your exercise training period, these genes in your skeletal muscles don't get upregulated. So not only you don't get metabolic benefits, your muscles are not any better off in terms of dealing with oxidative stress. Because Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, because you prevented the oxidative stress signal.
Right. So if you were going to harness antioxidants, these things we're talking about, right? The responsive kinase and so on, these are these acute? Or if I exercise this morning, is it okay if I take antioxidants later in the day after the exercise has been completed and the signaling upregulation occurs and my body will adapt to the exercise? Do we know that?
Well, I don't know about I don't know how to give you advice on specific regimen for supplementation. So I think the process of signaling in exercise muscles are very complex. So for example, in our study, we found that CaMKII oxidation actually modifies the global gene expression profile of exercised muscles. We looked at it 3 hours after exercise. We only look at 3 hours because it's very expensive to look at multiple time points. But we noticed that CaMKII oxidation is involved in more than 50% of the changes of gene expression due to exercise. And other people have looked at gene expression changes after exercise. It actually can last for a couple of days. So if you have only one single bout of exercise, your gene expression profile in your muscles are different from people who are sitting there without moving, even a couple of days later. So I don't know exactly when the reactive oxygen species signal play a role in this process. I would guess it's probably more toward the acute phase, but I cannot give medical advice on this.
Yeah, of course. You know what's really funny? I remember reading a study about 8 or 9 years ago that looked at the role of IGF-1 in the proliferation of tumors. And the study showed that reactive oxygen species will destroy a tumor cell if allowed to. And that IGF-1 is not only a promoter of growth, but it's a powerful antioxidant that completely quenches reactive oxygen species, which means that IGF-1 creates both a push and a pull to promote tumor cells to grow. And, so for the past 4 or 5 years, I've been saying anybody who thinks that there's just one thing, everybody's always looking for the one thing. What's the one thing? It's an insult into the millions of years that has created the most complex species in the world. Everything is, and the problem is people just want to know one thing. Oh, ROS is bad. No, it's not. ROS sometimes is good.
Right.
So it's just fascinating to me, really.
Actually, you had right another target of antagonistic pleiotropy when you mention IGF. It's another prime example of such a gene. So people who live super long, people who live up to 100 years old, actually a lot of them have reduced IGF signal. And you can see this in them and in their progeny. So it's an inherited phenotype. And actually, some of the genes that reduce the IGF pathway signals are involved in super longevity. But the trade-off of this, even for long life, is that people with reduced IGF pathways typically have a shorter stature and they have lighter body weight.
Right.
So that's a trade-off you probably don't want to take if you live in the wild and you're trying to find a mate or escape from predators.
Right. This is so fascinating to me.
I think this. I'll just quickly. I think this also just reflects even a broader, more generalized conclusion that we can make about how evolution works, in that it takes what it already has, what features are available to it, and changes them. And so, in other words, if there is an evolutionary problem, not to be speaking or thinking teleologically too much here, but if it had to evolve a completely new, for example, signaling network in order for the species to survive that problem, or the individual to survive that problem, that would be very limiting to the process itself. So what it does is it takes a gene that already exists and it deploys it in a new way, a different time during development and a different place in the body. And so over millions of evolutionary years, what we are left with is this huge network of complexity where a gene is doing different things at different times. And to try and unravel that for human health is a hugely difficult thing to do. And I think earlier, Carl, you said something that's very important, the specificity of actually seeking out the problems and also eventually the solutions to those. There isn't going to be a single answer to these problems.
Right. And, quite frankly, we are still evolving. People think evolution happened a long time ago. We are now evolving under the influence of large amounts of radio frequencies in our environment. We are evolving, selection pressures are interesting, and most people don't recognize them while they're happening. We only recognize them when the generations up ahead of us are different than what they were in the past. And so it's really fascinating to me because I think a lot of people think of the evolution as this thing that happened millions of years ago.
Right.
But it's happening right now. And sometimes, as you just pointed out, we're kind of in the middle of a transitional, like this gene is just figuring out what it needs to do, but that's conveyed to our offspring.
Exactly. And one evolutionary change will change the dynamic further downstream. Exactly.
Yeah, this is the epigenetic conundrum. How genes are expressed and what they do based on environmental influences and heredity and so on. It's very fascinating stuff. I can have you guys on every day and we can talk about some amazing stuff. And especially because Dr. Wang, he says the things I say. Gee, why would evolution do it this way?
Yeah.
You know, let's figure that out first before we try to figure anything else out. And I think that's brilliant. It's really insightful. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Remember those rectangular toasted pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the superhuman nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today. That's DAN.KOPITZKE at superhumanradio.net to learn more. Every day, there's a new wellness trend. Eat that. Do this. Avoid those. How do you know where to start or who to trust? Inside Tracker helps you cut through the noise by analyzing your blood, your DNA, your lifestyle, and your fitness tracker to provide you with a science-backed, trackable action plan on how to live, age, and perform better. Personalized, one-size-fits-one recommendations to help you optimize you. For a limited time, Inside Tracker is offering Superhuman Radio listeners 25% off the entire store. Go to shrnetwork.biz/inside tracker, INSIDETRACKER, to save 25% off. Change begins on the inside. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. If you've listened to Superhuman Radio for any length of time, you know I'm a big proponent of peptides. One of my favorites is GHKCU, the blue copper peptide. It has the ability to repair and regenerate more youthful expressions of skin cells, reversing the signs of aging. RestoraCell's stem cell awakening serum, along with their other products, contain potent formulations of blue copper peptide and only the highest quality organic ingredients. Superhuman Radio listeners can now save 25% site-wide. Buy their complete set and receive a free exfoliating cleanser. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. Remodel your skin today. Knoll Creek Hemp Company's Delta 8 soft chews are the premier Delta 8 product on the market today. Knoll Creek's Delta 8 is produced from high-quality hemp-derived CBD oil, and soft chews are manufactured using proprietary nano-emulsification technique that ensures the Delta 8 soft chew will timely deliver the desired effects cleanly and consistently from piece to piece. In a space where at least 70% of the products fail to meet label claims and where most users of conventional hemp products are left disappointed, Knoll Creek's Delta 8 soft chews are a product you can trust. Visit shrnetwork.biz/delta8. That's DELTA and the number 8 and use the code SHR20 to get 20% off your first order today. Phlebotomy.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. We're ripped and we're ready.
Welcome back. So, from what you've gathered in this research, can we take any type of a takeaway message about how we can interact and express and take advantage of this calcium MK2 protein to continue to evolve and develop greater levels of fitness without maybe also turning on a lot of senescence?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking at now. So as you see from what we just talked about, CaMKII is involving both detrimental and beneficial roles. So the fact that CaMKII is one of the genes involved in this antagonistic pleiotropy program, and there are many genes like this. May feel like a somewhat pessimistic thing to find, because it tells us our senescence is embedded, it's ingrained due to our evolutionary history. And there might not be much to do about it because it's so complex. But I would take a more optimistic view about this. So the fact that we can find only 2 amino acids on CaMKII that are responsible for this oxidative activation suggests...
Let me guess. Methionine.
Yeah, methionines. Yes.
But you know what actually blunts the negative effects of methionine? Glycine. And glycine is found in soft tissue. So we must go back to eating the whole animal instead of just muscle meat. That's, that's a simple man's approach of looking at it.
So I think that from a basic research point of view, finding genes like this tells us maybe we can target them specifically, either directly on them or by looking at the other proteins that are controlled by them, and then find out specific ways to modify their activity. And this, I don't think, will alter the overall trajectory of our lifespan, but it may help us to live longer, like by preventing some age-related diseases when we get older. So this is in the short term. But by finding and studying genes like this in the long term, maybe eventually we will be able to decipher this complex network, and we may be able to do more. So that's one message I have. And the other message is things like exercise are still very good. So it increase your oxidative stress, but as you see, it activates signaling molecules like CaMKII. And it can goes on to turn on your body's intrinsic ability to defend against oxidative stress. Actually, this effect can last long. So when you exercise, you get a short stress, but you have long-term benefit.
No, I mean, exercise saved my life. I was dying at 49 years old. So, I mean, this show is one of the few anti-aging shows that we don't just look at drugs and therapies. We exercise is a critical part of the prescription for the show. Dr. Bever, you want to contribute anything to that summary?
I would just reiterate it. It's all about understanding the network first. We first have to understand how these molecules are talking to one another, what is regulating the complexity in the network that we find. And it's only then that we can move forward with specific solutions that I agree with what Dr. Wang said. We're really striving for increasing the quality of our life in the second half. And who knows what will happen with overall, lifespan. But right now, quality is of utmost concern.
I really wonder that just the way we find duality in everything, like it's good, it's bad. When it does this, it's good. When it does, I am really starting to wonder, just because of some anecdotal evidence, if high doses of antioxidants aren't actually not only beneficial, but will not stop you from the adaptations you want in your weightlifting. And here's why. Jack LaLanne took 10 grams of vitamin C every single day. Michael Hearn, a good friend of mine, 10 grams of vitamin C every single day. Porter Cottrell, former bodybuilder. He's my age. He looks amazing. 10 grams of vitamin C every single day. And they train. Now, all three of those subjects were hypermuscular, hyper strong, very youthful. Jack LaLanne, if he doesn't get pneumonia, he's probably still alive today. And they're all aging so well. So I predict what we're going to learn is this. What we think are the markers of adaptation to the mitochondria are, but there's others. We know that uncoupling proteins make mitochondria work harder. And we know that antioxidants are supposed to block the adaptation process. I think somewhere in between mitochondrial function and preferred function. Okay, what we know about mitochondria and what we're about to learn about mitochondria is going to be the bridge to go, oh, so antioxidants don't stop adaptation. They stop those markers of that adaptation. But then these markers that we didn't know were markers of adaptation have become interesting to us. That's just a guess. Just a guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of redundancies in cellular signal. When you block reactive oxygen species, other pathways might still be working. And they may overcome the antioxidants effect.
Yeah, no, this is fascinating. So what would you hope that clinicians and lay people take away from your work? I'll give you each a chance to answer that before the end of the interview. You go first, Dr. Wang.
Well, I think looking through evolutionary lens can teach us a lot.
Yes. I look at everything, every single thing. I think, why would evolution have given us that? That's how I look at my own life. How about you, Dr. Bever?
I would stick with that same message. Our deep history means a lot. And in order to make good choices going forward and to direct our efforts in the best places, we need to understand where we came from and why we are the way we are.
I hope that you guys remember this show when you publish more research, because I want to have you two guys on. You are right in my wheelhouse. We are, because what we're talking about today is something that we will look at and use going forward. Most science looks at what happened and try to explain it. What we're talking about today is here's the gifts, the evolutionary gifts and edicts that we have, and here is how to exploit them. People talk about biohacking. You know what biohacking is? Getting in line with your evolution. That's really what it is when you think about it, because all the diseases we have are diseases of modernity. I hope to see you both again. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We're going to take one quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about testosterone replacement therapy for your neutered dogs. And this makes so much sense to me. Think of people. Think of why aren't they just doing tubal ligations in female dogs and letting them keep their ovaries? Why aren't they doing what is it called now? I can't think of the name of it. But why are they taking a male dog's testicles when all they really need to do is snip the tubing to keep other dogs from getting pregnant? We're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Carl Lenore. Superhuman Radio is the longest running health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast in the world, going into our 16th year of continuous production. If you have a product that you think would appeal to the superhuman nation, we can get you on the air quickly and inexpensively to help promote your brand. Join the ranks of some of the largest and most successful companies in the world who know how great it is to be affiliated with Superhuman Radio. Contact Dan Kapitsky today. That's Dan.Kopitze at superhumanradio.net to learn more. I keep saying the number one killer is insulin resistance. Managing blood sugar is the key to living long and aging well. But we all like to eat starchy carbohydrates and sugars from time to time. How do I manage this? I use a product called Blood Sugar Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This easy-to-take supplement is the result of numerous tests to find the absolute best formula for maintaining healthy blood sugar. Blood Sugar Breakthrough works to safely lower blood sugar after meals so that you can maintain a healthy weight and redirect carbohydrates to your muscles where they can be burned as energy. This means you'll avoid the worst effects of high blood sugar, like weight gain and advanced aging, while enjoying more stable energy, mental clarity, and fewer cravings. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blood sugar and save 10% with code SHR10 today. I need to share with you all a revolutionary new wearable technology called HapB. HapB allows you to enjoy the effects of caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, melatonin, and muscle relaxants without actually ingesting anything. Yes, really. They figured out the unique magnetic signature of each of these molecules and recorded them. Just put the HapB on, choose the signal you want, and it starts projecting the magnetic signature of that molecule molecule that you choose, like coffee for feeling alert. Go to happy.com/SHR. That's HAPBEE.com/SHR. Learn more and unlock an $80 discount exclusively for the Superhuman Radio listeners. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. Phlebotomy. Is there something interfering with your happiness or ability to achieve your goals? BetterHelp can help. They will assess your needs and match you with a licensed therapist. This is not a self-help or crisis line. It's professional counseling done securely online. They have a broad range of experts and are available worldwide without having to wait in an uncomfortable waiting room. Get the help you need and start living a happier life today. Go to shrnetwork.biz/betterhelp. That's better, HELP, and receive 10% off your first month of counseling when you use the code SHR. Redcon One's new BAR bar is the ultimate soft-baked protein-packed snack bar, powered by peanut butter. Perfect for while on the go to help curb hunger or sneaky sweet tooth cravings. With 20 grams of protein, use as a meal replacement bar or when you're in need of a high-protein snack. Eat a Redcon One bar as a midday snack or for fuel before an intense training session. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Redcon1 and use the code SHR25 and save 25% off these delicious bars today.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. We're joined by Dr. Linda Brent. How you doing, Dr. Brent?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here with you, Carl.
Well, I'm excited too. We do a lot of shows about dogs and cats. Well, cats too. I mean, the truth is we do a lot of shows about dogs, and probably there are people out there that are mad at me because we don't do enough about cats. But with that being said, the dog food industry has been a focus of mine for a long time. And I always wondered why they didn't do vasectomies and tubal ligations in dogs. And I know why. Because at the end of the day, while everybody says, I love my dog is like part of the family, there is a limit for how much time they're going to invest and money they're going to invest. And this is true of veterinarians now, too. You know, they still think to themselves, well, it's just a dog. And it's really unfair from a scientific standpoint that we castrate and ovariectomize dogs at very young ages, thinking like those glands contribute nothing positive to the dog. It's just it's crazy to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, that was one of the main points that I wanted to talk about is, in any other animal, and think of us, if there was a young person who ended up, having unexplained surgery or, something happened that they lost their natural sex hormones, they would have replacement, right? I mean, no one would question how important those are for your lifelong health. Yet in dogs, and especially those that are adopted from shelters, are often neutered and spayed sometimes just at a few weeks of age. Their entire life, they don't have the right kind of hormones in their body.
I've owned only one dog that was neutered, and it wasn't my decision. I bought, when I was 19 years old, I'm 63 now, I bought a Hungarian Vizsla from a family in upstate New York who bred show dogs. And the only reason why I was able to buy this dog, because he was monorchid. He only had one testicle that dropped. And Biba Norton, her name was. She was Hungarian, and they raised the most beautiful Hungarian Vizslas in the world. They had several show dogs that like were in books. And she said to me, I'll sell you this dog for 500 instead of 5,000, but you have to promise to get him castrated because only one testicle dropped. That's a mark against the line, the line, and we can't have the chance of this dog breeding because you didn't pay $5,000 for him. That's really what it was. It was just like, oh, get a discount because he had one ball. And so I said, okay. And I went to the vet, and the veterinarian even said to me, I said, do I really have to do this? He goes, oh yeah, the probability of the one that didn't drop becoming cancerous is high. And I didn't know if that was true or not, but I did have him neutered. And I never attributed his level of anxiety until recently, reading in anticipation of this interview, that male dogs who are neutered young, they tend to become anxiety ridden, hyper anxiety, hyper fidgety, and all that sort of stuff. And it makes perfect sense because testosterone conveys a sense of capability to a male. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can cover this. If you don't have that, you're like, oh my God, something's going to happen. And I never thought about Theron was so anxiety ridden, and it was probably because I had him castrated at a young age.
Yeah. Well, and the dog that we wrote this case study about is actually my dog. And I've been working for years with Parsimus Foundation to try to let people know of the research that's out there showing that these dogs that are spayed and neutered, especially at a young age, not all dogs, but some, have much higher rates of different health conditions. And my own dog, his name's Toby, and we got him from the pound. We wanted to be responsible. So we go to the pound. Of course, they make you, they won't even let you have him until they castrate him. So he was 7 months old when we got him. Gorgeous little puppy, well, he was half grown, I guess. Sociable. He was in the pound with lots of other dogs, lots of people, no issues, moving around well. We bring him home, he's fine. But literally within about 3 months, he started becoming very anxious. He started limping. He hardly moved, and he gained so much weight. Oh my gosh, he probably doubled in size in just 3 or 4 months. And so we thought, holy gosh, what's wrong with him? We started taking him to our veterinarian who, like most veterinarians, very well-meaning, very helpful. We went down all the traditional path of, trying everything on him, anxiety drugs, anxiety medicine.
I mean, think about this. We're giving these dogs anxiety medications because we cut their testicles off in the first place.
Yeah. It was very difficult.
This looks remarkably like the medical system that treats people too, by the way.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm going to say.
No, it's the veterinary field. Veterinarians are wonderful, caring people, but they're pretty slow to change. That's my experience. The medical field, there's so much commercialization and so much, going on in terms of trying to get them to start using newer medications and newer procedures and everything. But you don't see that in the veterinary field as much. And so I think, in the United States, veterinarians aren't even trained to do, in most cases, to do vasectomy or hysterectomy, which would be hormone sparing methods to sterilize your dog. But in other countries,
can't they just do tubal ligation? Do they have to remove the uterus as well? Because the uterus.
Yeah, it's tricky with dogs. Female dogs get a disease called pyometra, and it's a disease that happens around the cervix, and it's very serious. It's hard to know your dog has it almost until it's too late. So it's very serious. So if you can do a tubal ligation, and of course they'll be sterilized, but they still have the risk of pyometra. If you do a hysterectomy properly and you remove the entire uterus, no uterine tissue left behind, then they don't have the risk of
but they keep pyometra. Their ovaries. Now, is there any
leave the ovaries in place?
Any indication that kind of surgery causes trauma to the ovaries that makes them not work anymore?
No, the ovaries you don't even touch the ovaries when you do that kind of surgery. They're left in place. They stay exactly how they are. Okay. And so that surgery is really no more difficult than doing where they take out the ovaries and the uterus.
Right.
I think a lot of veterinarians are a little bit unsure of, exactly how much to take out, but on our website, parsonist.org, we have instructional information. We have veterinarians that'll assist new veterinarians in learning the procedure. So we really try to help as much as we can.
Why do people get their male dogs neutered these days? I mean, I have a lot of ideas why they think they're doing it, but why do they really do it?
Yeah, I think, it really depends on where you live. In the United States, the pet overpopulation problem was so incredibly bad, in the 60s and 70s. And there was just an enormous campaign, spay-neuter campaigns, right? We all know about it. We all know if you're a responsible pet owner, you spay or neuter your pet. It's become part of the fabric of good pet care. And all the veterinarians, this is what they tell everybody who has a new puppy, unless you happen to be a breeder, I guess. So it's kind of part of what we do. Now, that was one aspect among many others that did help curb the pet overpopulation problem. I mean, it's drastically different than it was in the past. So we have made those kinds of improvements. But at the same time, we've learned in the last 10 years, especially through research, that now that we have all of these spayed and neutered dogs that are having all of these long-term health issues, and we're not talking about minor stuff, we're talking about a lot of cancers, a lot of orthopedic conditions. We're not just talking about, your dog got fat, or your dog has urinary incontinence where it pees on the floor when it's excited. We're talking about serious life-changing issues with dogs. The problem, I think, is in this country that we letting go of the idea of spay-neuter being the only way to do it has not happened at all. What we would push for is just think about your dog as an individual. Some dogs have a high predilection for these issues, like Vizslas, like golden retrievers, like boxers. Every dog breed is so different. Sizes of dogs makes a difference. A lot of times small dogs, as long as they're not spayed or neutered real early, can do okay throughout their life. But if you're like me, if you have one dog, like your dog, who had problems, probably related to spay and neuter, I'll never do it again. I'll never get a dog that I have to remove his natural sex hormones.
And if the problem is this is why I asked you, why do people get their dogs spayed and neutered, right? When I was a young man, I worked on the racetrack with thoroughbred racehorses, and they gelded male horses that were unruly. If you had a young horse, he was attacking people, and they attacked. They would try to stomp on you. They would bite you. You sent him to the farm, and he came home, and he had no testicles, and all of a sudden he was really relaxed, But if people are spaying and neutering their dogs because of the fear of overpopulation of pets, then why do that? Why not just, snip, and or like you're saying, just do a hysterectomy, leave the ovaries, and you don't need to remove these sex glands. Are so critical. We know that neuroses is associated with dramatic changes in testosterone and estrogen levels. We know that in the case of humans, children who present schizophrenia never presented until right at puberty. So we know that these hormones are really important for people. They're important for your dog too.
Right.
And just because all your veterinarian offers is spay and neuter, that tells me you need a different vet. I would say go into the vet and say, look, I'm not going to castrate this dog, but can you do a vasectomy on him? Gee, I've never done one. Let me look in the book. Okay, and then get back to me. Because you don't have to take the testicles to keep him from breeding.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's just that we're, as a country, not quite at the stage where there's enough veterinarians who would offer those procedures compared to the demand. We get requests from people, every single day, saying, help me find a veterinarian to give my dog, what people call it, instead of a hysterectomy, they often call it an ovary sparing spay. It's the same thing, just leaving the ovaries intact. And it's hard to find them. Veterinarians are busy. Some of them don't want to learn a new procedure, or they just don't think it's necessary. And so I think we're at a supply and demand issue right now. I think that the public is going to, over time, demand and more and more and more, just like what you're saying, going to the veterinarian saying, this is what I want done. I've done my research. I understand the situation. I'm willing to take the issues at hand, because you also have to keep in mind, a dog that's had a vasectomy or a hysterectomy has hormones. It can't get pregnant. The females can't get pregnant, and the males can't impregnate a female, but they still have the natural sex drive. So if you have a boy, you need to be able to keep him fenced up, right? I mean, you can't let him roam, even if you don't think he's going to impregnate anybody, because he'll be, interested in girls. Right. And girls will still go through a heat. It's a dry heat, but they'll still go through heat, and they may solicit males more. So of course you have to be responsible for your pet. And you have to be willing
you're responsible for your children. You know what I mean? When your son starts going through puberty, you got to have the talk with him, and you got to make sure that he. But so the number one killer of dogs today is cancer. This is especially true in golden retrievers and Labrador retrievers.
Extremely common.
What we know today about cancer is it is the highest. You have the highest risk of cancer if you are diabetic, type 2 diabetic, because insulin resistance and raising blood sugar levels cause changes in the mitochondria that lead to oncogenetic changes in the cell that lead to glucose feeding tumors. So we know this. So we also know in postmenopausal women that when estrogen and progesterone start getting wonky, they start having blood sugar problems. Yeah. We also know that when men's testosterone plummets, they become insulin resistant and they start having blood sugar problems. So what we're really doing by spaying and neutering at a young age is almost guaranteeing that that dog will get cancer later on in life, and you'll spend thousands and thousands of dollars for human type treatments on your dog that could be avoided because when you said your dog doubled in size, to me, I'm thinking that's insulin resistance.
Yeah.
So is there evidence that, so now your dog went back on, you are actually giving your dog testosterone, right?
Yeah. And the reason we decided to publish this, it's only one dog, but this has never been done. At least not in the published literature. We found some research that talked about giving estrogen to females that had been spayed for incontinence, and that works. Right. It works by lowering luteinizing hormone, right? I mean, that's part of the feedback loop, right? That signals sex hormones. When you have no sex organs, there's no feedback from normal testosterone or estrogen levels, and your LH just goes skyrocketing. So it works in that regard. And what I did, I'm not a veterinarian, but I'm an animal person, an animal behaviorist by training. And I worked with a theriogenologist, which is a veterinarian who studies reproduction. And she helped me kind of figure out a good therapy for my dog based on basically 3 years of trying everything with my dog had gotten to the point he would hardly move around. His hip hurt so much. He was on massive pain medicine. We got a new dog thinking, well, maybe another younger dog would help him move around. And it was it just makes me almost cry thinking about it. He couldn't even play with him. He was so messed up. Right. We put him on testosterone first, and that started getting him back in shape, right?
Really? So he started losing body fat.
Yeah, he had become very atrophied in terms of muscle and got fat. And so he started losing fat, gaining an enormous amount of muscle, especially in that hip area that was causing him pain. But we found by doing the tests that his luteinizing hormone, which was like some 8 times what it should be, did drop, but nowhere near what a normal dog would have. So we also gave him an implant called deslorelin that works on GnRH that kind of stops that cycle of increasing LH.
Wait. It works on GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone.
Right. Which is what stimulates the pituitary to make LH, which is luteinizing hormone. And there's evidence that LH is found, everybody thinks of it as just a thing that stimulates testosterone or estrogen, but it isn't. It's found in lots of different parts of your body. And it's related to appetite. It's related to all sorts of, bones and tissues and everything else. And so there's a good chance that it's not only the testosterone that's important, but also this super high level of LH is actually stimulating all these other health problems in the dog. And that's a hypothesis. We still need to do more work to look into that, but it's a very likely hypothesis, because once we got my dog's LH levels down, his testosterone was up, the anxiety started going away.
Yeah.
So now
there's studies that showed, this is an old study, I've talked about it over the years, probably 8 or 9 years ago. They looked at police officers. Older police officers make bad choices, bad decisions when they're under pressure. And then they correlated very, very closely with the police officers that had the lowest and the highest testosterone levels. The ones who had the lowest testosterone levels overreacted too quickly to situations that were manageable. The guys who had the higher testosterone levels, they seemed to feel like they were in more control and they didn't have to become as aggressive as quickly. And so this idea that testosterone is, not necessary from a psychological standpoint, we know that it is in humans. Why wouldn't it be in dogs too? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, and there used to be this idea that if you had a dog that was aggressive, you get him neutered and that would fix it. Well, that's not right at all. In fact,
it makes them more aggressive.
It does. That they found that neutered dogs are actually more aggressive to strangers than intact dogs.
And you know why that is? Because they don't feel capable of handling the environment. So they
overreact
fast. Yeah. I'm not going to be able, and they go right away. Yeah. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now your dog is on now. Okay. So the implant, is this a long acting gonadotropin releasing hormone that over time shuts the production down?
It goes, in our experience, it doesn't shut it down completely. It goes all the way down back to the normal range.
Okay. So but it is a long-acting gonadotropin releasing hormone. So it's almost like ADT for men when they have prostate cancer and they put them on a long-acting gonadotropin releasing hormone so their testosterone plummets. It's their luteinizing hormone that plummets, but you're supplementing with testosterone, so there's no negative unwanted.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it lasts. It's an implant. You don't have to sedate them or anything. You just put it in like a microchip. It's about as big as a microchip.
Right.
Every 6 to 12 months. The testosterone we give by injection, and just because you could probably try different ways, but I was putting, they don't have a lot of skin. I was putting some of the lotion on his ear, and it really was irritating.
No, you can't do that.
He loves his weekly shot. I mean, he's been conditioned. I give him a treat afterwards, so he holds perfectly still. I give him the shot, and then he's so excited. So it's this is a moderate acting, so testosterone cypionate or an anthate that you're giving him? Cypionate. That's
so how many milligrams once a week do you give a dog of testosterone cypionate?
It's the dosage that we've used in this study. Again, this is just one animal, but it's 0.5 milligrams per kilogram. So he just gets 0.15.
So 15 milliliters. That's an oil base.
Right. It's just a tiny little, and it's an insulin syringe. He doesn't even feel it.
Like 25 milligrams a week you're giving him.
Yeah.
That's what you're giving. If it's 200 to 250 milligrams a milliliter, then that's about 20 to 25 milligrams a week you're giving him. That's amazing. And
I only give him the shot once a week.
Yeah. So that shot is 25 milligrams. But what a lot of people don't understand about cypionate and ananthate is the pharmacokinetics of it. In the first 3 days, 50% of the dose is released. And then over the next 25 days, the balance is, there's a little depot there. The larger the depot, the faster it releases. But but again, you're only giving him what would be considered about 20 milligrams a week, which, by the way, is what women take when they use subcutaneous injections of testosterone cypionate. So after about 3 or 4 weeks, it accumulates and it gets them right into that sweet spot where women belong, just under 200 nanograms a deciliter. So are you using any other hormones, DHEA, anything like that?
Nope. We just, once he got stable and seems to be doing well, I just thought I better just leave him alone.
Yeah.
There just isn't any information out there in dogs to do this. So what we're really hoping by publishing this information is to encourage more research in this area. What is the best, everything, all the methods, what's best, what's long-term issues, he just went for his checkup. So I made sure his liver was checked, right? I made sure his prostate was checked. He's 6.5 years old now. And, there's things you just want to be watching for. He's like an intact dog, right? In terms of the hormones that he has.
Right.
So.
This is exciting. I won't say I'm optimistic about how the pet care community is going to react to this. And here's why I say that. They're really like pet food. We've done numerous shows about kibble and pet food on it. Kibble is horrible to feed dogs. It destroys their kidneys. It leads to all sorts of horrible problems. More importantly, we just revealed on a show today that most kibble, even if it's like Dr. So-and-so's special diet with real beef and all that sort of stuff, is 50% on average carbohydrates. And dogs don't do well with carbohydrates. This is what feeds their cancer quite often. And getting veterinarians to consider feeding animals a low carbohydrate dog food is virtually impossible. They will tell you that dogs need carbohydrates. And then if you say something sensible to them, like, well, where do wolves get their carbohydrates from? They go, oh, well, domesticated dogs are different. They're absolutely not different. That's like saying humans that live in the wild are different than humans that live in captivity. They're really not. We still need the same foods to thrive, and we have the same foods that will destroy us. So I'm not hyper optimistic.
Evolution doesn't work that quickly.
Yeah, but here's what I am hyper optimistic about, especially with my audience. So my audience will take matters into their own hands and start giving their dogs, 0.15 ml of their testosterone cypionate to see what happens to their neutered and castrated dogs. And I think that this is going to have to be a bottom up, where people start doing this and asking their doctors to do it and saying, I don't want my dog castrated. I want tubal, I want vasectomy, and forcing the doctors to do this. Because if the doctors have to lead this charge, in my experience, and this is all doctors, veterinarians, doctors who care for human beings, they're not going to do it. It's, you know what? They don't want more I don't want to have to learn something new.
Yeah. I agree with you. And that's what we see. I mean, we are definitely seeing the bottom up approach where there's an enormous demand. There's information out there. People are crazy attached to their pets, just like I am. I mean, especially now people have been home with them for the last almost 2 years. They really are understanding them better. And so I think that this movement and the demand is going to have to be the thing that drives change.
Yes, people are going to have to push for it.
But we try at Parsimus Foundation, we try everything. We work with everybody, and our push is to really think of your pets in an individualized way. Do your research. Look at the literature that's out there. Talk to your veterinarian. Find a veterinarian who's familiar with all of these issues, and make an informed decision before you get your dog spayed or neutered.
So the website you're saying, it's Parsonage?
Parsimus. It's PARSEMUS.org.
MUS, Parsonmus.
Yep.
Okay, .org. Okay, so people can go there and reach out to you as well and ask you questions.
Yep. Yeah, and we, we're a small team, but I get lots of emails. We will help you figure this out if you need some help. So you can always just
now.
Send us a
what
message.
About the female dogs? Obviously, there are several different forms of estrogen.
Yep.
The ones that seem to be the most important are estrone is the bad estrogen, just for the record. Estradiol and estriol seem to be the important one. If you have a female dog, are they talking about estrogen and progesterone?
Yeah, well, nobody's been doing anything like that. Like I said, the only literature that we could find was specifically related to urinary incontinence. So there's a number of different drugs that have been used in different studies. Most of them are pretty effective. But yeah, I don't think we just don't have history. We don't know if it's going to help dogs not get cancer or have, avoid, cruciate ligament tear or whatever. So, we're at the very early stages of this.
Yeah, so somebody needs to start looking at that as well.
Yep.
It's really funny. So many women take pharmaceutical drugs because of urinary incontinence. And really, it's just the lack of estrogen in their body.
Mm-hmm.
But if they go to the doctor and say, most doctors, there's a lot of forward-leaning doctors today, thank God. But if they go to the average general practitioner and say, I have urinary incontinence, they'll just prescribe some sort of medication for them, which, by the way, causes kidney problems over time because it embargoes fluid in the kidneys and doesn't allow the kidneys to do their job of filtering out things and getting fluid out of the body. But more importantly, the doctors won't go, well, that's because your estrogen is low. Let's just get you on some bioidentical estrogen, because they'll say, oh, no, estrogen is dangerous. It's a hormone. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you've lived with estrogen for 40 years.
Right.
I
understand exactly what you're saying. I'm at the age where I've gone through this in the last few years. And yeah, you basically, my experience is you basically have to make stuff up and tell your doctor you have, sexual dysfunction to get what you need.
Yeah.
It's very sad. And there's some good ones. I was lucky. I finally found a great gynecologist, but not everybody's that lucky.
So Robert Thompson says animal shelters neuter all male dogs. They don't birth puppies, only neuter them. Politically correct to neuter male dogs. I don't think political correctness has anything to do here. I think this is look, when we had wet dog food in cans, it was actually good for dogs. The war came along and they said, we need the metal for the tanks and the war. And so around the same time, they discovered that if you put this food in a kiln and dry it out so there's no moisture, it'll last on a shelf for 5 years in a bag. And that's why we feed dogs kibble today. It wasn't because somebody said, hey, kibble's better for dogs. No, dog food cans were an inconvenience and we needed that metal. So it doesn't have anything to do with political correctness. There's this notion that, it's just a dog. It's still an animal. It's like that for some reason, the dog in your care deserves slightly less concern because at the end of the day, he's still an animal. And that's just nonsense. If you understand you're doing harm to your dog by feeding them a high carbohydrate kibble food that will eventually destroy their kidneys and give them cancer, make them fat, destroy their joints and everything else that it does, but you do it anyway, you really don't care that much about that dog. I'm sorry, I'm going to piss some people off, but you really don't. Because if you cared, you'd find another way. You'd find, go to your butcher, buy scrap meat, do whatever you got to do. But the reality is when convenience is challenged, he's just a dog.
Yeah.
Sad. Very sad. All right, well, look, this is great stuff. Give the website again, please.
It's parsemus.org, parsemus.org. Okay. We'd love to have you learn about your dog on our website and reach out to us if you have any questions.
Linda, thanks for being on the show today.
Great. Thanks.
Take care. And that's it for today. It's just the beginning of the week, and we have lots of good shows all week long, so don't miss one of them. And don't forget to share these shows with friends because who knows whose life you could actually change. And we'll see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for being here today.